didn't know, of course, at that moment that I was asleep, because we were never really aware that we had fallen asleep. It's just something that happens. And then I woke up.
Dr. Simon, Josiah's new therapist in the psychiatric facility, asked Josiah to sit, and Josiah sat in the chair near the table while Dr. Simon sat in the chair near the desk.
First of all, Josiah, I want you to feel as comfortable as possible during our time together. In fact, there's no need for you to call me Dr. Simon. That's not very comfortable, is it? I'd like you to call me Bob. Is that okay with you? Great. I also want you to feel comfortable enough to say anything you want to say, anything at all, and not be afraid that I or anyone else is going to judge you or get mad at you or that you are going to get into trouble. You won't get into any trouble for anything we say here. Is that okay? Finally, I want you to know that I am on your side. I am not mad at you. I do not blame you for what happened between you and Mrs. Lawrence. Obviously, you reacted the way you did and did the things you did because you felt uncomfortable. Now, let's be honest. You and I both know what happened because Mrs. Lawrence did something that caused you to feel threatened. Does that sound right? Come on, Josiah. Does it sound right?
Yes.
Great. It's good to hear you admit it, and it's totally understandable. It's totally natural for one to protect oneself when one feels threatened. No one's judging you for that. Certainly not me, anyway. All I'm concerned with, Josiah, is exploring other ways to deal with those same feelings or similar feelings. Other ways of dealing with similar situations. Better ways. Does that sound okay?
Okay.
Great. Because while no one is mad at you, and no one is judging you, it is very important that we realize that reacting the way you did, doing what you did, was hurtful. Not only to Mrs. Lawrence, who had to go to the hospital, but also to your classmates who probably were very scared at the time, and maybe still are scared, a little. And then, of course, we have to think of Mrs. Lawrence's family, her husband, who probably loves her very much, and is very sad and worried, and her own children, if she has any, which she probably does. We have to consider how our actions may have affected all of these people. And you, we can't forget you. Think of how all of this is affecting you.
When Bob was speaking of Mrs. Lawrence's children, Josiah felt himself almost begin to cry.
So then, let's begin by discussing other ways that a person such as yourself might have reacted to Mrs. Lawrence's threatening behavior. Sound okay?
Yes.
Good. Okay, Josiah. Imagine that we are both back in your classroom on the day of the incident between you and Mrs. Lawrence. Imagine yourself in the exact spot you were in just before the incident occurred.
What do you mean?
I mean, Josiah, where in the classroom were you just before Mrs. Lawrence made you feel threatened?
At my table, in my chair.
Who else is at that table?
Sally Donald and Brian Martinez.
Okay, Josiah. Imagine yourself sitting at your table, in your chair, next to Sally Donald and Brian Martinez, just before you felt threatened and bit Mrs. Lawrence. Are you imagining it, Josiah?
Yes.
Where is Mrs. Lawrence?
Standing over me.
Describe it.
She's... What do you mean?
How is she standing? What is she doing? What is she saying?
She's very close to me.
Yes, and?
She's very close to my face.
What is she saying?
She's telling me to say my name.
Just say your name.
Yes.
And are you saying it?
No.
What is Mrs. Lawrence doing?
Yelling.
Yelling?
And getting close to my face.
What are you feeling?
What do you mean?
Are you angry? Are you threatened?
I'm angry.
Why?
She won't stop.
And what do you want to do?
Make her stop.
And how?
I'm going to bite her nose.
And stop. Stop there, Josiah, and begin to think. Hold on to the feeling that you felt, the anger, but think, what else can you do other than bite Mrs. Lawrence's nose?
I don't know.
Think.
I don't know.
Think, Josiah.
Over the course of the next 2 days, Josiah and Bob discussed various things Josiah could have done other than biting Mrs. Lawrence's nose, such as Josiah asking her to please back away because she is very threatening, or Josiah closing his eyes and counting to 10, or closing his eyes and imagining that he is in a warm, non-threatening place, or laying his head down on the table and pretending he had fallen asleep, or crying uncontrollably in an attempt to garner sympathy, or simply snapping at Mrs. Lawrence's nose rather than actually biting, which would not have been ideal, but which would have captured Mrs. Lawrence's attention and would certainly have been better than actually biting her. On the third day, Bob began to ask questions that were similar to some of the questions that Josiah's previous therapist in the psychiatric facility had also asked. These questions had to do with what Josiah's life was like at home and what his relationship was like with his mother. When Bob started asking Josiah what his relationship was like with his mother, Josiah told him,
She's not my mother.
She's not your mother.
No.
What do you mean she's not your mother?
She's not my real mother.
She isn't?
No.
Who is your real mother, Josiah?
My real mother is a goddess.
When Bob then asked Josiah why he believed his mother was a goddess, and what particular goddess he believed his mother to be, Josiah reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of yellow paper and handed it to Bob.
Josiah, this is a picture of Cher.
My real mother is the goddess. Cher.
2 days later, on a Friday, Fridays being the days that patients at the psychiatric facility were most often sent home, Dr. Simon, Bob, determined that while Josiah was clearly either delusional or a pathological liar, or something to that effect, and that he seemed to have numerous unresolved issues with his mother that probably resulted in the incident in question, Josiah had clearly learned new ways to deal with his feelings and was no longer a danger to anyone. For the first 5 minutes of the ride to the town 46 miles away, where Bree lived with her mother, Josiah and Johnson Davis were both silent, other than Johnson Davis's light humming. At the end of those 5 minutes, Johnson Davis turned to Josiah and said,
So, Josiah, how are things?
What?
How are things going?
What thing?
Your first week, schooling, new home, etc.
It's fine.
And how are your studies?
Fine.
Learning a lot?
Yes.
Good.
Johnson Davis and Josiah again remained silent for the next 3 minutes. Until finally, Johnson Davis turned to Josiah and said,
It must be hard learning all alone at home. Do you ever miss going to school, Josiah?
Not really.
No. Not at all? You don't miss the people, the friends, the classmates, being with your group of guys, your buds, and of course the girls. Surely you've had your eye on a couple of girls, a couple of sweethearts, crushes?
No.
Not at all?
No.
Because if you did, Josiah, if you had a crush, that would be okay. It would be nothing to be ashamed of. It would be perfectly natural for a boy your age. Well, take Bree, for instance. Bree, I have to admit, is a pretty girl. If you had developed a crush on Bree, that would be perfectly understandable. Do you have a crush on Bree, Josiah?
No.
Come on, Josiah. Do you have a crush on Bree? Is that why you bought her the soccer ball and drew those pictures? As a father, Josiah, I have to say that I found your illustrations a bit alarming. Seeing that was a bit difficult for me, but at the same time I can understand. I see from your perspective at your age why such illustrations would come about. I have to say I did similar things for myself at your age. Maybe a bit younger, I won't go into specifics, but similar things. All boys do in one way or another. Now, your mother, Josiah, she is a bit more concerned than I am at the moment. She believes or is afraid that you've begun some sort of relationship with Bree. Some sort of physical relationship. Is that true? Are you in any sort of physical relationship with Bree, Josiah?
No.
Because believe me, Josiah, I've had my share of problems with Bree, more than my share, and I've reacted in the past much like your mother is now, worse even. But in this case, I think what we have is nothing more than a crush, an understandable crush given the circumstances. Is that right, Josiah?
I guess.
Good. That's what I suspected. Now that brings us to the other issue. This issue of mothers and fathers and planets and whatnot, which your mother is mostly upset about. I'm sure you were aware that your mother is very hurt by the things you said this morning. Are you aware, Josiah?
Yes.
Good. And I'm sure that you didn't mean the things you said, and that deep down you really didn't wish to upset your mother so badly. You may in the moment have wished to upset her, but not so badly. You see, Josiah, all young men and women, as I've experienced, believe me, I've experienced it. Oh, I can tell you. All young men and women, young adults, go through this. They go through this period of viewing their parents or parent as oppressively wronging them, justified or not. Generally in some abstract way, but not always, and wishing to lash out and even hurt that parent, either emotionally or physically, but more often emotionally, I would hope, anyway. You, Josiah, are no different than anyone else. I went through the whole show myself, filling my father's toothpaste tube with mud, as your mother, no doubt. The problem, Josiah, in this case, is your choice of words and your choice of subject. In this case, the words you have chosen for your mother are particularly hurtful. There may be no worse thing for a mother to hear, a mother who has cared for you and raised a child all by themselves, to hear from that child that they believe them not to be their real mother. There can be nothing worse, save perhaps hearing that child has died or maybe murdered someone in a rampage. Nothing. You have to understand that while all the motives behind your actions this morning, namely teenage rebellion and so forth, do not excuse the particular hurtfulness of what you said. Now, Josiah, you don't really believe that your mother is not your real mother, do you?
Yes.
Yes, what?
Yes, I do.
Yes, you do know that you don't really believe that your mother is really your mother? No, what?
She is not my mother.
Now, Josiah, that really isn't necessary. We can drop that right now. Your mother is not here, and I'm not going to be impressed by this little show of yours. You and I both know, Josiah, that your mother is your mother, and she loves you very much.
She is not my mother.
Josiah, I need you to stop saying that. Stop saying that she is not your mother. I don't want you to just stop talking, Josiah. I need you to say that your mother is your mother.
She is not my mother.
All right, Josiah. I'll play along. If your mother is not your mother, then where is your mother?
On the planet Parnuckle.
On the planet Parnuckle.
Yes.
You know, Josiah, your mother has told me about this planet Parnuckle. She tells me, Josiah, that the planet Parnuckle is the home of your father?
Yes.
Yes. Sort of a strange name, isn't it? Parnuckle. So that makes you, Josiah, a Parnuckliite, right? Yes.
Parnucklian.
What's that?
Parnucklian.
Yes, Parnucklian. So tell me, Josiah, what's it like being a Parnucklian?
Fine.
Fine. It's fine. So how much do you know about this planet, Parnucklian?
A little.
A little. Like what?
I don't know.
You don't know.
No.
You don't know? Well, how about this? Your mother tells me that the reason you ate nothing but chocolate is because the people of this planet eat nothing but chocolate.
Yes.
Seems strange, doesn't it? Nothing but chocolate? Strange that they would even have chocolate on another planet?
They don't call it chocolate.
Oh, yes, right. They call it, what is it?
Ogly.
Yes, of course, Boboli. How could I forget? What else, Josiah?
What?
What else can you tell me about this planet, Parnuckle?
I don't know.
Oh, come on, Josiah. Surely you have more details than eating nothing but chocolate. We're talking about an entire planet. What about the cultures, the architecture, the climate?
Josiah told Johnson Davis the same details that his mother had often told him as a child, and that he had twice told to his classmates in the first grade. Namely, that no one on the planet Parnuckle ever has to take baths or showers because there is no dirt. And no one ever goes to sleep because no one ever gets tired. And no one ever has to go shopping because everyone already has everything already in their house. After which, Johnson Davis again rolled his car to the shoulder of the freeway, more slowly this time, and turned off the car's engine and turned to Josiah, saying,
Josiah, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to think very carefully about your answer. Actually, no, I don't want you to think carefully about your answer. I don't want you to think about your answer at all. I want you to answer immediately, as soon as I ask the question, without thinking.
Johnson Davis stared at Josiah. Josiah stared back.
Are you ready, Josiah?
Yes.
Here comes the question. Don't think, just answer. Ready?
Yes.
Josiah, you believe that Parnuckle is real?
Yes.
No, Josiah. No, I don't think you're playing the game correctly. Now, I want you to think about it. I want you to think about it very hard. Do you think that your father, whom you've never met, is a spaceman from another planet called Parnucklian, where the only food is chocolate? Chocolate, which they call boboli, which is bread, and where there's no dirt and no shopping and whatever else you said, and that your mother, your real mother, whom you've never met, not the mother you've known your entire life, who has loved you, nurtured you, and is a wonderful woman, your supposed real mother is also on this planet, and is a goddess. A goddess who resembles Cher, who is a concert singer, Josiah, an entertainer. Think about these things very carefully, Josiah.
Johnson Davis and Josiah stared at one another.
Are you thinking about them, Josiah?
Yes.
Now I'm going to ask my question again. Are you thinking?
Yes.
Josiah, do you believe Parnucklian is real?
Yes.
Johnson Davis closed his eyes and opened them again. He asked Josiah,
Do you believe that your real mother is a space goddess that looks like Cher?
Yes.
Johnson Davis turned from Josiah back to the road. He started the engine, re-entered traffic, and continued driving, not speaking to Josiah for the remaining 27 minutes of the trip. As Johnson Davis and Josiah and Bree approached Johnson Davis's car, which Johnson Davis had retrieved from the home of his former wife, Johnson Davis instructed Bree to wait outside for a moment so he could speak to Josiah, to which Bree protested that it was raining. Johnson Davis responding that it would be just for a moment and instructing Josiah to get in the passenger's side as Johnson Davis got in the driver's side.
You took my car, Josiah. You stole it, really. Why would you do that? Josiah, you must understand that despite the aptitude you've shown in our lessons, and despite the fact that I'm certain someday you will be an excellent driver, you are by no means ready, by no means, to begin driving on your own.
Josiah said nothing.
You don't even have a license. You could have been seriously hurt.
Josiah nodded and then looked over his shoulder at the sound of the driver's side rear door opening.
Did I mention it's raining?
Shut it.
Look, I'm sorry, I'm getting soaked.
Shut it. You could have been seriously hurt, Josiah. Your mother nearly died. Really, Josiah, she could have died. She was injured. She ran across the lawn after you when it was wet, and she slipped and twisted her ankle. She can't stand on it.
Josiah said nothing.
Between that and her head, you're literally killing her, Josiah. You have to stop.
Josiah said nothing. Bree again opened the passenger side rear door and sat down in the back seat. Her hair and face and clothes were all wet. Josiah liked the way that her hair looked, all wet.
Out.
This is ridiculous.
Out.
No, I'm not gonna just stand out there in the rain. I know I fucked up, but I'm not just gonna go stand out there. We have to talk.
I'm talking to Josiah at the moment.
We have to talk.
5 minutes.
No, now.
Rock, paper, scissors.
No.
5 minutes then.
2.
3.
2.
Fine.
I'm counting to 120.
Bree got out of the car and shut the door. Josiah could hear, even through the sound of the rain, hitting the top of the car in the windshield. Bree counting.
1, 2, 3.
It was her. She made you do it. Convinced you somehow. Called you, told you she was grounded, and that you had to rescue her. It was all her idea. If you really loved her, you would rescue her. Something like that.
Josiah said nothing.
You can tell me, Josiah.
Josiah listened as Bree counted.
13, 14, 15.
Tell me, Josiah.
21, 22, 23.
Look, Josiah, I can understand being in love. I truly can. I've been in love many times, dozens of times. I know what it can do. In college, I was in love with a girl named Judy Florence for 3 years. Madly in love. For 3 years. Unrequited love, the worst kind. 3 long years. You should hear the things I did. I won't bore you with it right now. We haven't the time, but I did some ridiculous things. Would I have stolen a car for Judy Florence, Josiah? You're goddamn right I would.
51, 52, 53.
I know what you're going through, Josiah. I know the power she has over you. She's manipulated you, made you do things otherwise you would have never done. Women have power over men, Josiah. They can be very manipulative. Your mother told you the story of Adam and Eve, didn't she? Eve very much, so much that he would do anything for her. Anything. So what does? She manipulates him into eating the apple. The devil's apple.